It's getting to be that time of year where rotation is fast approaching. It feels like just yesterday we had last rotation and already we have another one. This time we are going to see some pretty big changes in our rotation. Some pretty prominent cards are leaving this format. This video is going to highlight some of the biggest losses in the 2024 standard format. So if you are not aware already, rotation happens on TCGL this Friday. So 2 days from this video going live. And in real life, it'll happen 2 weeks after that on April 5th. That's, of course, the more important date for most people because that is when we have to actually be playing with some pretty good cards. But we do get a couple weeks ahead of time on TCGL to try out this post-rotation standard format. Just real quick, if you are not already aware, we are going to be losing the E regulation mark. If you don't know where the regulation mark is on your cards, you can see the little circle there where that F is. That's the F regulation mark. So that card would be safe, but something with E or older would most likely not be. All right, let's go look at honorable mentions first. These are cards that didn't quite make the list as the most devastating losses in this rotation, but they are still important cards in their own rights. So Duraludon VMAX, Kyogre, Professor Burnett, and Pumpkaboo all had their own roles in this standard format. Professor Burnett, of course, had a really important role in Lugia, helping find the Archeops and get them in the discard pile. Pumpkaboo itself discards a stadium card. Often that was Path to the Peak. Kyogre, we don't need to say too much about Kyogre, but there was a version of Lost Box with Kyogre that did some devastating damage once it set up, but it did have to set up, so it took some pretty serious skill to get that going, and Duraludon just kind of popped in and out of the format as special energies were popular. At number 20, we have Medicham V. Medicham V saw a little bit of play toward the end of its lifespan in Entei Valiant decks. Entei Valiant decks were never super popular, but they did see some success here and there. So Medicham gets number 20. At number 19, we see Melanie. Melanie has the effect attach a water energy card from your discard pile to one of your Pokemon V. Pokemon V, many of them are leaving the format, not all of them, of course, but this will impact Palkia, which really has relied on Melanie in the past, and Ice Rider Calyrex VMAX, of course, itself is also rotating. That will also impact Palkia specifically. Palkia, of course, is the biggest user of Melanie. And then number 18 is Zacian V. The Gardevoir decks, many of them are still running Zacian V, and some of them have chosen to forego it in favor of Drifloon or Screamtail, or the combination of the two, but Zacian V does still see play. It is still a very good attacker in that deck, so it'll be quite a loss when it goes. That is a nice, easy way to have big damage and a lot of HP to absorb that damage without having to have a tool in addition to the basic Pokemon. So, goodbye, Zacian V. Interestingly enough, when I was preparing this, I realized that last year, when I did the rotation list for 2023's rotation, Zacian V from Sword and Shield happened to be in this exact same spot. So, fun little bit of fact. At number 17, we have Energy Recycler. Energy Recycler, just kind of a good card in general for decks that seem to need to re-get their energy from the decks specifically. So decks that run Mirage Gate really liked Energy Recycler because they could throw energy back into the deck, quite a bit of it that is, and then get it back out with Mirage Gate to reattach stuff. Now that we're going to have to be very reliant on Super Rod specifically. Unfortunate, but they'll survive. Energy Recycler has seen play, but outside of Mirage Gate decks, it really hasn't seen a ton. So while it is an interesting loss and kind of an important loss, it's not the end of the world, I don't think. And of course, in that same vein with Lost Box in general, we do rather say goodbye to Dragonite V. Dragonite V was a big integral part of Lost Box decks for quite a while. It was a big attacker, did lots of big damage, just kind of an important card in general in that deck, and now we get to say goodbye to it. It is gone. Yeah, no more Dragongill. No, Dragonite's been largely replaced by Roaring Moon and by Iron Hands in Lost Box decks. A lot of decks are leaning toward that Paradox style Lost Box. So Dragonite's loss is not the end of the world at the moment, but it'll still be missed. Additionally, at number 15, we have Fog Crystal. Fog Crystal, of course, was a very important card for Gardevoir, not only to find basic Pokemon, but also to find Psychic Energy to either discard or attach as needed. So seeing Fog Crystal go, a bit unfortunate. Also affects decks like Xatu variants, literally anything that runs Psychic Pokemon, or Pokemon that evolve from Psychic Pokemon. So goodbye, Fog Crystal. You came out with Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX, which did not even make this list, unfortunately. It has not seen relevancy for quite some time. But Fog Crystal has remained important in the format all the same. Additionally, we see Mirage Step Kirlia going the way of the Dodo. It is leaving the standard format too. So Gardevoir, once again, was pretty reliant on this to help get itself set up. It would throw a Mirage Step in the active spot on turn 2, and then quickly get its other 3 Curly out so that it could be a little bit more resilient and have a little bit better setup against spreading decks and just decks that could take quick knockouts in general. So, Kirlia, goodbye. And we have Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX. This was an absolute menace when it first released, and especially when Mew from Unbroken Bonds rotated from the standard format, as there was no way to protect yourself from Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX, short of just not benching Pokemon, and even then, it could still hit your active spot with Gmax Rapid Flow, which is kind of its signature destructive move. Gmax Rapid Flow, of course, doing 120 and 120 to Pokemon. Because of that, because of it being quite the menace, even though it's not the worst thing in the world now, it still gets the Good Riddance Bronze Award this year, where we're glad to see it go, even if it's a sad thing for a lot of people. I know Dark Bear Dojo will be quite upset that Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX got this award, but it's time to say goodbye. At number 12 is Flaaffy. Flaaffy seemed to only see play at the very tail end of its life, like a few other cards on this list, but boy, was it important in that tail end of its life. Dynamotor, of course, a reprint of Electric from It Was Noble Victories, Black and White era, all the same. Getting that energy from your discard pile onto one of your Pokemon on the bench. This saw quite a bit of play with Miraidon. Miraidon players, of course, realizing that Flaaffy was quite good for the deck after like 3 months, 4 months, whatever. Their love affair with Regieleki VMAX was thankfully fairly short-lived, and everybody realized that the sheep was just better. So Flaaffy, unfortunately, is gone. So if Miraidon survives at all, it'll either be with something like Energy Sticker or sheer dumb luck with Electric Generators. And a big loss for Gardevoir decks is what many would consider its main attacker, Shining Arcana Gardevoir from Chilling Reign with the Brainwave attack that does 60 damage plus 30 more damage for each psychic energy attached to this Pokemon. So this was, of course, the Pokemon you would really load up with energy to do those big KOs, in addition to Zacian, of course. But now it's gone. We won't have the drawing power for Shining Arcana, the attaching power of Shining Arcana, or, unfortunately, the damage output of Brainwave. Gardevoir was just a really cool card that kind of didn't get the love it needed right out of the gate. And very much like Flaaffy, it didn't see a whole lot of love until toward the end of its lifespan in the standard format. And that's kind of a recurring theme I'm noticing on a lot of these cards, is they became relevant toward the tail end of their time in the format. But all the same, they are leaving. At number 10, we have Mew. Mew with Mysterious Tail from Celebrations, which had the once during your turn, if this Pokemon is in the active spot, you may look at the top 6 cards of your deck, reveal an item card you find there and put it into your hand, then shuffle the other cards back into your deck. So this was seen in some Stage 2 decks, including Gardevoir, as a way to fish out your rare candies, fish out your search cards, and just help yourself set up in general. Fortunately, Mew is, of course, going with the rest of these cards. I remember not being especially excited about Mew when it was first revealed, but of course, it did see play, and I had quite a few copies of it because I'd opened a decent amount of Celebration. I'm glad this card saw play. I'm glad this card saw success, but I do really miss cards like Team Up Jirachi, where there's a little bit more to the interaction with the top of the deck. But I do appreciate this as kind of a weakened, more balanced version of that effect. At number 9, we have Echoing Horn. Echoing Horn. This saw play in and out of the format quite a while it was around. I know Mew abused it for a while. Urshifu abused it for a while. Decks that can gust or decks that can spread with big damage loved Echoing Horn because it can force a Pokemon they've already knocked out, that they know they can knock out, back into the field, and then take another big knockout. This helps that 2-2-2 strategy that Mew often uses, and frankly, good. It was useful, but it was also very niche, and a lot of decks only ran 1 or 2 copies, so they had to actually find it to get that effect. Frankly, I thought it was pretty good. I think it was a fairly balanced card, but we won't have this kind of effect in the format going forward. It's leaving. Closest thing we'll have now is like Erica's Invitation from 151. The biggest loser of this card at the moment is Snorlax Stall and Pidgeot Control archetypes, which are kind of mushing into each other a little bit. So Snorlax will say goodbye to this, but frankly, Snorlax has quite a few tools at the moment, so I don't think it's that sad. However, Avery is gone. Avery, this is a card that I can confidently say that I underestimated. I was not especially hyped on it when it came out. I know I did my set review for Chilling Reign and thought it was not that good. But after having played with it the last couple years, I was quite wrong. This card was phenomenal. It saw a tremendous amount of play. It was good as a 1 and 2 of in a lot of decks. So many decks in this format want to go wide, and Avery was great at punishing that. Whether that's to get rid of your support Pokemon like Manaphy or Jirachi, or to force you to get rid of your other attackers, Avery just did the job, and in a lot of ways is kind of a one-sided version of, well, I guess it's still one-sided anyway, but Parallel City. It's like a Parallel City is a supporter that drew cards, right? It just doesn't stick. It just forces you to discard. And Avery's a good card. I don't think it will see any play in Eternal format after the rotation, and it hasn't really prior either, because Parallel City does exist in that format. And I suspect the same is largely true in Expanded as well. But this was a great card for Standard. At number 7, we have Level Ball, which allowed us to search for a Pokemon with 90 HP or less, put it into our hand. This card hurts to see this one leave. I love this card primarily because it helps us set up decks that have lower HP. We got Buddy Buddy Poffin that lets us get basic Pokemon that have 70 HP and less. But the ones that kind of needed this really were like the stage 1s. Decks like Kirlia or the upcoming Sinistcha. This kind of card would do them a lot of good. And seeing this card lead the format is kind of upsetting to me. I do feel like something like this should just be evergreen so that little guys have something to go and use always. But at least they gave us Buddy Buddy Poffin. We'll go with that. But goodbye, Level Ball. You will be definitely missed. Another card that people are panicking a little bit over leaving is Escape Rope. Escape Rope is a phenomenal card that was last printed in Burning Shadows prior to its print in Battle Styles. Of course, both players are made to switch their active Pokemon. This could be used in Rope Boss combinations to break walling effects, or to just get a Pokemon out of the active spot that they didn't want there, or to force a new one into the active spot. Escape Rope was phenomenal in Lost Box decks, but it was also just great as a 1-of in a lot of other decks. So seeing Escape Rope go is both sad and kind of good. It does make walling effects like that of Fluttermane better, Klefki better. The upcoming Iron Thorns EX will also be better because of Escape Rope being gone. So it's kind of a sad thing to see it go, but at the same time, I'm kind of glad it's leaving. It's an interesting situation to feel, or interesting thing to feel, I guess, in the situation. And then there is Raihan. This is the first card where I'm kind of upset to see it go. Raihan was just a very, very good card in a lot of decks. That extra energy attachment often meant the difference between being able to attack the next turn or that turn and not. And then, of course, being able to get whatever card out of your deck that you needed after that was just phenomenal. It kind of helped balance out the snowbally effect that sometimes the games can have when your opponent is not only taking knockouts, but also taking prize card and getting access to more and more of their deck as they get closer and closer to winning. And Raihan was just a really cool way for them to try to balance out that prizing mechanic. I am sad to see Raihan go. Another card that is a little upsetting to leave, although we are getting a similar card here in Twilight Masquerade, is Clara. Clara had the dual effects of choosing one or both, to put 2 Pokemon in your discard pile, from your discard pile rather, into your hand, and or to put 2 basic energy cards from your discard pile into your hand. This effect was extraordinarily good in Standard. It's very good still even in Eternal format, which should tell you everything you need to know, because that format has an enormous amount of very, very good cards, and Clara made it in there. But it's just a super good effect. You're getting any kind of Pokemon back. You're scooping, your Iron Hands or your Miraidons or whatever out of the discard pile, and you're getting your basic energy back too. Super, super powerful. We are getting a similar card in Twilight Masquerade, as I mentioned earlier, Lana's Care, which is the fan translation name. But that one, this is similar to an ordinary rod, and Lana's is more similar to a super rod. And then Lana's, you're getting a combination of Pokemon and basic energy cards up to 3, but you also cannot target rule box Pokemon with Lana's. So there is kind of that trade-off. That down powering of Lana's might be a really good thing though, so we'll see how that goes. At number 3 is Mew VMAX. This deck is one of the decks of all time. It has absolutely terrorized the standard format since it was printed. It has dominated and fallen out of favor in and out. But for the most part in the standard format for the last few years, it has just, it's been a menace. Even when it wasn't seeing the most success, it was still around because people knew they could win with it. Judge Path is a thing. Marnie Path was a thing. And Mew was its best user, and it knew it. Being able to do huge damage with the Fusion Strike build with Meloetta, or just being an excessively toolboxy, disruption-heavy deck with the DTE version of Mew, pretty much no matter what, Mew was ready to be a menace, and it loved being it. It had every tool it could possibly want, and then some. It's just, this deck was given every answer, and it used them. And because of that, it gets the Good Riddance Silver Award. I am super happy to see this card go. The standard format will absolutely be better without it. Good riddance, Mew. Be gone. At number 2 is Battle VIP Pass. Yes, this is number 2. This card, like Mew, which, they came out in the same set, so go figure, absolutely has warped the standard format around itself, making decks really, really reliant on either setting up that first turn or just kind of falling apart to their opponent that did with Battle VIP Pass. And their retraining of Battle VIP Pass as Buddy Buddy Poffin has certainly been a great thing. Obviously, Battle VIP Pass was a little different because you could get rule box Pokemon, but you could also only use it on your first turn, whereas Buddy Buddy Poffin can only get basic Pokemon with 70 HP or less. You can use it on any turn of the game. So huge trade-off there. The down powering / upgrade of Buddy Buddy Poffin is quite welcome at the same time. And I'm super glad that it's available for evolution decks, because a lot of those evolution decks, well, I can't talk. A lot of the evolution decks like Charizard and Gardevoir really relied on something like Battle VIP Pass. Although, of course, there was the non-Battle VIP Pass Gardevoir. A large chunk of them did, in fact, rely on this card, and a large chunk of decks in the format in general have relied on it. So seeing it go, people are going to have to shift back to Ultra Balls and Nest Balls and any special balls they might have for their particular archetypes, but I am extremely glad to see Battle VIP Pass leave, and for that, it gets the Gold Good Riddance Award. Goodbye and good riddance to Battle VIP Pass. And then finally, at number 1, the biggest loss to the standard format. You've probably already guessed it. You've probably already been like, but why hasn't it appeared yet? I don't understand why this card hasn't appeared. Well, that's because it's at number 1, and that card is Path to the Peak. This card made a massive impact on the standard format when it released in Chilling Reign. It made Chilling Reign my favorite format in the Sword and Shield era. In large part because of how well it paired with Ice Rider Calyrex VMAX, but also just the fact that Path to the Peak made it so that these very ability-heavy decks that were kind of just running around everywhere, relying on massive amounts of draw and just crazy abilities, were suddenly put on ice, right? They were slowed down and made to actually play the game a little bit and not just kind of face roll everything. And for that, I think Path to the Peak did a phenomenal job. It replaced a similar stadium that had rotated a while prior, Power Plant, but just Path to the Peak in general was such a strong card, and is such a strong card, that I would not be heartbroken if it got reprinted at some point in the future. But frankly, I don't think that's going to happen. I think they're going to let it leave. It does seem like they kind of intend, at least to some degree, to let the new Iron Thorns EX kind of fill a similar role to this card. But Iron Thorns is just not remotely as universal as this card was. So it remains to be seen how this particular card leaving the format will really impact the standard format. Obviously, Charizard gets quite a lot better because it doesn't have to worry about its ability being shut off, and Path of Peak was a big part of that. But there are other things that it shut off that it definitely needed to do. Things like Lumineon V, for example, right? I would love to see Ability Lock come back with a really strong effect at some point in the future. Personally, I would prefer it to be on a card like Garbodor that had Garbotoxin. But I know a lot of people are very glad to see Path of Peak leave because they don't like dealing with Ability Lock, and it is saying goodbye. So the question I have for all of you, you've seen my top 20 cards leaving and my honorable mentions. Which card are you which card are you going to miss most when it leaves the standard format? If you play TCGL, obviously on Friday, you'll see the impact here. And if you don't, you'll see it in 2 weeks on April 5th. So which card are you going to miss the most? Let me know in the comments. I'm actually looking forward to seeing what everybody says. But with that, that is all I have for today. I hope you enjoyed this little video. And you can learn a bit more about the standard format rotation at justinbasil.com via a link in the description, justinbasil.com/rotation, and it'll help you learn what's rotating, learn what decks you can play, and everything else you could possibly need for rotation. But as I said, that is all for today. I will see you in the next video.